Okay, so this is rational functions number 2. This is all about horizontal asymptotes. In number 1, we talked about holes and vertical asymptotes and a little bit about domain, and this one is about horizontal asymptotes. So, here are the rules. There are 3 rules, and you have to know them. You have to remember them somehow. So, when the degree of the numerator is greater than the degree of the denominator, there is no horizontal asymptote. It's oblique, they call it in the book. If you read that, oblique just means it's neither horizontal nor vertical. It's at an angle. But we don't care about that. We just care about horizontal and vertical. So when I look at this example, the degree of the numerator is x squared minus 4x. The degree is the highest exponent, remember, so that's a 2. And the degree of the denominator, x plus 1, well, that degree is 1. So notice the degree of the numerator is greater than the degree of the denominator, so there's no horizontal asymptote. And horizontal asymptote, I'm just going to write HA for horizontal asymptote. All right, rule number 2, if the numerator is less than the degree of the denominator, okay? So this time I look at the top, the degree of the numerator, the numerator is again x plus 1. I just flip these over, so the degree of the numerator is 1, so degree of numerator is 1, and then the degree of the denominator is 2. So when that happens, y equals 0, or the x-axis, is our horizontal asymptote, okay? So now here comes the fun part. When the 2 degrees are equal, then you use the leading coefficient, okay? And you just make a fraction out of them. The leading coefficient, remember, is the coefficient for the largest exponent, so we've got our degree. So that's going to be the equation, here's our formula. Y equals the degree of the leading coefficient of the numerator divided by the leading coefficient of the denominator. Okay, so let's see if we can practice these 3 rules, okay? So here's the first example. 3x squared plus 11x minus 4 divided by x squared plus 2x minus 8. Those degrees, the degree of the numerator is a 2. That's this number right here. The degree of the denominator is also 2, right here. So they're equal, so I use the leading coefficients. So the leading coefficient of the numerator, that's going to be a 3. And the leading coefficient of the denominator, that's going to be a 1. So my horizontal asymptote is going to be y equals 3 over 1, which is just 3. And if you graph these, you'll notice that y equals 3 is the horizontal asymptote. All right, good. Here's the next one. Now this one I'm trying to trick you, so be careful. So this one, notice, what's the degree of the numerator? It's not the first term, is it? It's a 2. So the degree of the numerator is a 2. The degree of the denominator is just a 1. So when the degree of the numerator is greater, that means there is no horizontal asymptote. When the numerator is greater than the denominator degrees, there is no horizontal asymptote. All right, now we have them. Another example. The degree of the numerator is a 1, and the degree of the denominator is 2. So when the numerator degree is less than the denominator degree, the horizontal asymptote is the x-axis, or y equals 0. Okay? All right, so make sure you know these rules as you're practicing. All right, so the degree of the numerator is, right, 1. The degree of the denominator, be careful, it's not in the right order. It's a 2. So whenever the numerator is smaller than the denominator degree, our horizontal asymptote is y equals 0, the x-axis. Okay, now I have the degree of the numerator is a 2. The degree of the denominator is a 1. When the numerator degree is greater than the denominator degree, There is no horizontal asymptote. Oh, and we have one more. Ooh, this one is written differently. And notice in the top, if I were to multiply these two together, I'd end up with x squared blah blah blah, right? And if I were to multiply these bottom two, I would get x squared blah blah blah. So notice the degrees are the same. Even if I would have canceled this and this, which is okay, my degrees would still be the same, right? So you can either call them both 2, which we should, because I should do it before I cancel, or even if you cancel first, you can call them, 1 or whatever, but our degrees are the same. That's the important thing. So now we need the leading coefficient divided by the leading coefficient. All right, and the leading coefficient is going to be this number out front because x times x is just x squared, so there's nothing else there. And the bottom is going to be a 1 because, again, x times x is just x squared. There's nothing there. So y equals the leading coefficient of the numerator divided by the leading coefficient of the denominator. So y equals 2. So my horizontal asymptote is y equals 2. Okay? If the degrees are the same, use the coefficients. If the numerator is greater than the denominator, there is no horizontal asymptote. And if the denominator degree is greater than the numerator, then y equals 0 is the horizontal asymptote. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I'll try to put that all on one page. You can copy it down. You can start and stop, whatever you have to do. So